Hi, everybody. I'm Brad Kelly, the Regional Coordinator for the Society of Biblical Literature's Pacific Coast region. And this is 7 Good Minutes, Meet Our Scholars. We think we've got some of the finest folks working in biblical studies out here in the Pacific Coast region. And this is just a chance for us to showcase some of our established and emerging scholars that we have out here. So really happy today to have with me Dr. David Tabb Stewart from Cal State University, Long Beach. Dave, thanks for doing this. How are you?
Well, thanks.
Okay. All right. Well, 7 good minutes. Here we go. So question number 1. I mentioned Cal State Long Beach. How long have you been there, and what all do you do in your role there?
Well, I'm in my 14th year at Cal State Long Beach. I taught before at Southwestern University in Texas. So I am a professor in religious studies, and my specialty is ancient Near Eastern religions. I was department chair for 8 years. That's fortunately behind me now. I've had my fill of chairing, but I am basically the Bible guy at Cal State Long Beach, and teach all the courses related to biblical studies there.
Okay, very good, thanks. So following up on that a little bit, what do you work on in your scholarship, just sort of generally speaking?
Well, the most general description is that I work on biblical law, but more specifically, I'm interested in Leviticus, which is, of course, everybody's favorite book. And I have a particular interest in Bible and body. So everything from tattoos to sexuality to disability and so forth and so on. So that's been at least a current interest for some time.
Very good, thanks. All right, well, question
so those
number
are
3.
Maybe the most general descriptive.
Oh yeah, thank you. Question number 3 is a little more specific along those lines, I guess. Is there a specific project that you've got underway right now that has you kind of excited in some way?
Well, yes, I have like multiple at the same time, right? So I'm writing about gender and sexuality in Deuteronomy as a chapter in a book, a handbook on Deuteronomy. And I've been invited to write a similar chapter in another book on gender and biblical law. And I'm finishing up another article on the idea of plague in the Hebrew Bible, specifically again in biblical law. And with one of my graduate students, I've been working on publication related to Lot's hospitality. So the story of both in the Hebrew Bible, that is Old Testament, and in the New Testament. So the sort of inner biblical exegesis that takes place along with it in Islamic texts. So we're looking at Islamic exegesis. So we're kind of looking at it across those 3 traditions, Jewish, Christian, Islamic, and especially inner biblical. And then within the Islamic exegesis, sort of inner Quranic, or also between Quran and Hadith, what is said about it. So I think that it's a slightly different angle on the story that focuses on the hospitality as a kind of failed hospitality story, and think of it in those terms. So that's something else I'm working on right now. So
very good. Yeah, for those who may be interested, that reference to the handbook for Deuteronomy, you can catch one of these 7 good minutes with the editor of that handbook, Don Benjamin. We did one of these as well, so you can hear more about that on there. But let me move on to question number 4. It's kind of a context question. Is there, what, if anything, I guess, do you find exciting or I guess maybe challenging about doing the work of biblical studies out here in the Pacific Coast region, or maybe in your case in particular, Southern California?
Well, I spent quite a bit of time in California before I came back here to teach at Long Beach State, so I'm happy to be back here. And for a long time, even when I was in Texas, when David Noel Friedman had his Biblical Studies West symposium each year, I would come out and that was at UC San Diego. I would come out to that. So I like the people out here. I did my graduate work, my PhD out here on the West Coast also. So I have friends all up and down the coast who do biblical studies. You know, I grew up on the East Coast, which might put, if I had stayed back there, it might have put me closer to many other biblical scholars. But I found in the West that people are sort of open to new ideas and less formal. And when I first got interested in the Bible was when I came out here as a teenager, and I ended up moving into a Christian commune here in Southern California. And that was what kind of got me started in reading the Bible of course, I'd read a little bit of it before, but I had an aunt that told me, if you want to read the whole Bible, you should read 3 chapters a day and 5 on Sunday. And I tried to put that in action, but got quickly killed off by biblical genealogies. So that was that. But when I came out here and I started reading it over and over and over and over and over again, and I became very excited about the Bible. I'm not just interested in Leviticus, by the way, but I got terribly excited about it as a book. I've written on Book of Job, for instance, and did my master's work on Job, and have spent a lot of time, especially thinking about inter-biblical connections. Part of how I got sort of some extra attention in my PhD program was when I walked into the Leviticus seminar. I was able to make connections with the biblical prophets that nobody else had thought of in the class, neither the professor either. So it was sort of like, oh, okay, you're here, you should be a part of this. So anyway, I have remained excited about this book now for about 52 years. So
Great. Well, the last question, we'll get you out of here on this one. It's a little bit of a tougher one, just that, you know, these are challenging times. What with the COVID-19 pandemic and social and racial injustice and Black Lives Matter and more. Just any thoughts on being a biblical scholar in the time and context where we find ourselves today?
I think one thing you can do is you can just confront them directly with biblical texts and talk about them through. I mean, this is what I've been doing with my students right now. So I have one class at the moment, the first unit is on Puritanism. So we talked, for instance, about slavery in New England and Native Americans who were enslaved by the early Puritans, opened us up to the topic of talking about the history of slavery in the US and relations with Native Americans. In my other 2 biblical classes that I'm teaching, what we did is we shifted to, we had a special day where we focused on Africana biblical interpretation. So both African-American, Afro-Caribbean, and African biblical exegesis. And in those 2 classes anyway, I tend to take a look at world interpreters outside of the usual suspects as interpreters, but I'll look at interpreters across the world of various biblical texts that we're looking at, so we can bring in those other voices. And oftentimes the students in my class identify with some of those voices. So if they're Korean, they identify with the Korean voices. If they're African American, especially with the African American exegetes, and so forth and so on. I've even gone out of my way to find Philippine-X interpretations. Some of my Filipino students, whom I have quite a few, also have someone that they can claim as their own. And sometimes the students like to do a different thing, which is to read someone that is not like them to see what they are saying also. This is all to say in a way that the Bible is such a rich book that we can't trust that we alone as interpreters, as individuals, or even in our own communities in a particular place, have seen everything of its richness. And therefore we need the others, the voices of others who have a different social location, background, and so forth, because they'll see things that we wouldn't normally see. They might see oppression where we just saw, well, things were going okay, or they might see problems for disabled readers, for instance, whatever it is, or they might see special notice given to persons with disabilities So for
Okay.
instance, the fact that Moses had a speech impediment suddenly becomes encouraging to people with disabilities, and also a reminder to abled people that disabled people are able to do great things.
Okay.
So
Good.
all of these things I think are important. And so that's why I just try to face it directly. Of course, it's part of a larger issue of question of evil, or sometimes people talk about the question of good, the
Good.
problem of evil or the problem of good. Why is there good? Why is there evil? So
Okay.
it touches into a larger discussion
Good.
also.
Okay. Wow. That's really good. Well, Dave, thanks for doing this. And everybody, that's 7 Good Minutes with David Tabb Stewart from Cal State University, Long Beach. We'll see you on here for the next one. Take care, everyone.